Hello everyone, let's share how a beginner can quickly perform welding. For thick electrodes, if the welding rod can be inserted, that's good. But if we proceed with continuous welding in cases like this, the weld will surely turn out poorly. Continuous welding easily causes burn-through or incomplete welds. So, how do we weld quickly in these situations? For thick surface welding, we first perform spot welds, dense dot by dot, step by step, dot by dot, with a perspective spot welding approach, applying thin spot welds gradually. Now let's look at the actual operation. This is a high-definition shot of the molten slag during thick surface welding. We do spot welds, leave a little space, weld a little, leave a little space, weld a little, and so on. When covering the surface, the speed becomes relatively faster. How to quickly weld thick surfaces? As mentioned earlier, apply dense spot welds, dot by dot, closely spaced, one at a time, in order to achieve fast welding. When covering the surface, we move the electrode in a zigzag motion like ironing with the rod. This produces a relatively flat weld. With low current, we can proceed in a smooth circular motion as well. Now let's take a look at the molten slag fast welding of thick surfaces. This is the process of covering the surface using molten slag fast welding. We use low current. The current should not be too large because excessive current easily burns through or causes weld leakage. This is what a weld leak looks like. Please double-click to show support. Thank you. Subscribe, Weldmaster India, for more tips and tricks. How to weld a 12mm single-pass joint. In the field, 12mm one-pass welds are very common. So, how do we weld them? Let's talk about it. Look at this groove. It's very narrow, right? How do we control the edge line? When welding, we take the center of the groove as the reference point. From the center, burn 3mm to the left and 3mm to the right. That's how we control the edge line. During welding, what about the technique and hand movements? Keep the electrode angle at about 90 degrees horizontally and tilt it toward yourself about 80 degrees. Start from the bottom and weld upward, slowly adjusting the angle as you move up. How do we control penetration? That depends on the current. The reference current is about 90 amps. If the current is too high, use the reverse crescent motion. If the current is suitable, use the sawtooth motion, which gives a flatter, smoother bead. Now, beginners often struggle to distinguish between molten metal and slag. Look closely. Under the electrode tip, the bright shiny part is molten metal, while the dark coating is slag. If you confuse them, it's easy to cause inclusions. So, which technique is better? With proper current, sawtooth motion is better, smooth and flat. With higher current, reverse crescent motion works fine. That's the method and skill for welding. Now let's check the finished weld. After welding, the bead form of the 12mm single-pass joint is neat and solid. This is the final appearance of a one-pass 12 weld. Learn something, brothers? If this was helpful for you, please give a like and subscribe Weldmaster India for more videos. Thanks for your support. Since adding rebar can cause cold cracks in large-scale welding with electrodes, it is not allowed to add rebar. So, under this condition, is there a fast welding method? Yes, there is. Today, Weldmaster India teach you this technique. Although this is pipeline welding with chain-type joints, in such cases, we must make sure that the weld does not leak, magnetic particle inspection passes. When welding without adding rebar, we can use what's called a light false electrode. With contact welding, the false electrode can increase the weld bead thickness and the bead width. This type of welding ensures both quality and the speed that the boss requires. During welding, it's best to choose acid electrode T, because when using contact welding, it is less likely to cause chain cracks. One important note, welding current must not be too high. It should be matched appropriately according to the root gap at the back. For reference, welding current is usually around 70 amps. Using this method not only guarantees quality, but also efficiency. Now let's take a look at the high-definition weld bead and welding technique. This is the weld bead formation after welding, and this is the final welding quality after cutting and finishing. That's the kind of hands-on teaching we need. So, did you get it this time? Be sure. The cutter gave you this kind of joint. If you come across something like this, Wouldn't you feel like having a chat with the cutter about life? Actually, everyone makes mistakes sometimes. It's not easy for anyone. The important thing is to find a way to fix it. For example, with a socket like this that has a 2 to 3 centimeter gap, that's not a small gap. So how should we handle this kind of job? First, on both sides of the big pipe and the small pipe, we build up some weld metal. Let's take a look. We adjust to a smaller arc and use the 2 forward 1 back technique, slowly building weld metal on the small pipe first. After the small pipe is done, then we go along the outer side of the big pipe to build it up. Once that's finished, it roughly forms like this. Compared to now, it looks a bit better. Then we choose a stopping point in the weld and fill it bit by bit. Now some fellows might ask, why don't you just directly use stop and start welding? Isn't that too slow? By first building up the weld metal, efficiency goes up, right? This is the forming, root weld, and cover pass. Subscribe Weldmaster India. I share welding tips every day.
Brothers, getting such a perfect weld on a small pipe is actually more difficult than on a big pipe. That's because the pipe is not only smaller, but the wall is also higher. One wrong move, and you'll burn a big hole straight through. For this kind of work, we can't use continuous welding. The most reliable method is intermittent spot welding, adding it one spot at a time. Now, some friends might ask, what's there to teach about spot welding? Isn't it simple? But that's a common misunderstanding among many welders. In fact, spot welding also requires skill. First of all, the current. We use a 3.2 millimeters diameter E6013 or J422 welding rod, and the current is generally set above 100. Press a little at a time, and pay attention to the change of your electrode angle. Let's take a look at the detailed operation. As you can see, the key to spot welding is the rhythm of breaking the arc and striking the arc again. You must maintain a sense of timing. Wait until the previous spot glows red and then darkens, then start the next weld. It's recommended to use the technique shown in the video. Strike the arc in the middle, swing a little to the left, a little to the right, then break the arc. The advantage of this method is that it spreads the molten metal evenly, giving you a cleaner and more beautiful weld. That's how you get good bead formation. If you've learned something today, tap twice and hit the subscribe. Thanks for support, Weldmaster India.